Sir, that little moon on your hand looks like my baby brother's. The words were barely louder than the rain touching the windows, but they stopped the Moretti sitting room harder than a slammed door ever could. Dante Moretti had only removed one black leather glove. That was all. One glove, one exposed wrist, one silver pen hovering above a stack of foundation papers, and a room full of powerful adults suddenly forgot how to breathe. The fire behind the brass screen gave the walls a low orange glow. Crystal lamps shone over dark wood, polished marble, and documents thick enough to move millions of dollars with a single signature. Maya Brooks stood beside the serving cart with both hands around a tray of water glasses, her old blue coat hanging too wide at the shoulders, one sleeve slightly shorter than the other because her mother had let it out twice already. She was 8 years old, a little black girl who knew the rules of houses like this. Stand straight. Do not stare. Speak only when spoken to. Do not make rich people notice you unless they are asking for more water. But she had noticed him first. On Dante's left wrist, just below the thumb, was a crescent-shaped birthmark with a tiny dark tucked beneath one end. Not a round spot, not a scratch, a little moon. The same little moon Maya saw on Noah's wrist every night when she helped change his pajamas. The same mark she traced with one finger when her baby brother could not sleep. The same mark Grace Brooks always covered before doctor visits, before bus rides, before strangers could ask too many questions. Dante's pen did not fall. It simply stopped above the page. Across the table, Valentina Moretti set down her teacup with a sharp click that sounded too loud in the sudden silence. Celeste Vane, dressed in cream and pearls, kept her smile in place, but her eyes moved to Dante's wrist before they moved to Maya. Lionel Graves, the family attorney, closed one hand over his leather folder, as if paper could protect him from a child's sentence. Near the doorway, Grace stood frozen with a silver pitcher in her hand. Her face had gone pale beneath the warm light, and when she whispered Maya's name, it did not sound like anger. It sounded like fear that had learned to be polite. Dante slowly looked down at his own wrist. He had carried that mark for 42 years. He had hidden it under cuffs, watches, gloves, and the kind of silence families call tradition. But now, under the lamp, with a child staring at it as if it belonged to someone she loved, the mark looked different. It looked less like skin and more like a question. Before he could lift his hand closer to the light, Valentina reached across the table with a smooth, practiced motion. "Your sleeve, Dante," she said, and pulled the cuff down over the birthmark. That was the moment Dante changed. Not when Maya spoke. Not when the glasses on her tray trembled. When his mother covered the mark before he had asked her to. His eyes lifted to Valentina's fingers still resting on his sleeve, then moved to Maya. The little girl had both elbows tucked in, as if making herself smaller could make the sentence disappear. Her yellow hair tie had slipped loose, and one curl rested against her cheek. Dante's voice came low and controlled. "What did you say?" Maya looked at Grace. Her mother's eyes begged her to be careful, but the truth had already stepped into the room and left muddy footprints on the marble. Maya swallowed. "My baby brother Noah has that same mark, sir," she said. "It bends like a moon, and it has a dot under it, right there." She pointed to the place Valentina had covered. Celeste gave a soft laugh that arrived too quickly. "Children connect shapes when they are tired," she said. "It is nothing." Lionel cleared his throat. "Mr. Moretti, this is an unfortunate interruption. The child has made a harmless comparison." Dante did not look at him. He looked at the covered wrist, then at his mother, then at the unsigned paper. "A child's sentence should not scare a room full of adults," he said. No one answered. Outside, a car rolled slowly across the wet gravel. Inside, Dante placed the silver pen flat across the signature line and pulled his wrist free from Valentina's hand. He did not uncover the mark yet. He only said, "No one signs anything." The room did not move after Dante stopped the signing. The silver pen lay across the page like a bridge no one was allowed to cross. Maya could still feel the sentence she had spoken pressing against her tongue, and she wished, for one brief second, that she had kept it behind her teeth. Grace moved toward her first, because Grace always moved before anyone else could decide what her children deserved. She crossed the polished marble carefully, still holding the silver pitcher. Every step controlled the way working people learn to move in houses where a dropped glass can sound like a crime. "Mr. Moretti, I am sorry," Grace said, her voice low. "Maya did not mean to interrupt. I will take her downstairs." Celeste Vane's smile warmed just enough to look merciful. "That would be best," she said. "The poor child is probably overwhelmed." Children who grow up around staff conversations often repeat pieces of things they do not understand. Maya lowered her eyes to her shoes. The toes were scuffed from the walk to school, and the reflection in the marble made them look even smaller. Lionel Graves opened his folder again, smooth and patient, as if legal paper could erase the sound of Noah's name. "Dante, with respect, this is why boundaries exist. Your home cannot become a place where an employee's child comments on private family matters." Grace's hand tightened around the pitcher handle. She did not answer. In that room, employee sounded cleaner than maid, but it cut the same way. Maya felt her mother's shame without looking up, and something inside her folded smaller. Valentina stood beside Dante's chair with her expression perfectly arranged. "Let them go," she said. "The girl is embarrassed enough." Maya was embarrassed. Her cheeks burned under the crystal light. But she was also confused because none of them had asked about Noah. Nobody asked if he was sick. Nobody asked what the mark looked like when his little hand bent around her finger. Nobody asked why Grace pulled his sleeves down before clinic visits. They only wanted Maya removed before the next detail could arrive. Dante noticed that he was not kind yet, not soft. His eyes moved over the room the way they moved over contracts, weighing what was written and what had been left out on purpose. Then he looked back at Maya. "Do you have that mark?" he asked. Maya shook her head. "No, sir." "Does your mother?" Grace answered too quickly. No, the speed of it made Lionel glance at her. Dante saw the glance. Maya lifted her sleeve, showing her own small wrist, plain except for a faint line from where her coat cuff rubbed her skin. "I do not have it," she said. "Mama does not have it. Noah does." Celeste bent slightly toward her, keeping distance between her cream dress and Maya's old blue coat. "Sweetheart, babies have all kinds of marks. Some look special because we love them." Maya nodded because she had been taught not to argue with ladies who smiled like that. "I know," she said. "Noah has a tiny brown spot near his ankle too. That one is just a spot. The one on his hand is the moon." Valentina's mouth tightened for less than a second. Lionel looked down at the unsigned papers. Celeste's left hand drifted toward her own wrist, then slipped behind her back. It was a small movement, almost nothing, but Dante had spent his life reading the half-second before people lied. He leaned back, his covered wrist resting against the arm of the chair. "I am not listening because she is a child," he said. "I am listening because you are all trying too hard not to." The sentence made Grace close her eyes. Not in relief, in fear of what truth might cost once a powerful man decided to hear it. At the doorway, a servant appeared, waiting for instruction. Lionel gave the smallest nod, as if sending Maya away could still be done quietly. Dante raised one finger without turning his head. "No one takes her anywhere." The servant stepped back at once. Maya felt Grace's hand settle on her shoulder, trembling but no longer pulling her away. For the first time that night, Maya understood that Dante Moretti had not chosen her side. Not yet, but he had stopped everyone else from closing the door before Noah's name could walk through it. Maya did not know what it meant to make powerful people wait. At school, teachers waited for children whose parents answered emails the same day. At grocery stores, cashiers waited for people who had full carts and working cards. In the Moretti house, no one waited for the maid's daughter. She was supposed to pass through rooms like a shadow, carrying water, picking up napkins, disappearing before her shoes could squeak on the marble. But now Dante Moretti was looking at her as if the next thing she said might matter more than the papers on the table. Maya's fingers touched the inside pocket of her old blue coat. Grace felt the movement at once. "Maya," she whispered, and the warning was softer this time, almost broken. Maya looked up at her mother. Grace's eyes told her not to make the room worse. But Maya thought of Noah downstairs, sleeping with one hand tucked under his cheek, the little moon hidden beneath his pajama sleeve. She thought of the question he asked whenever he saw the cracked plastic band she kept in her pocket. Was somebody there when I came, Maya? She never knew what to say except, the moon was there. Dante followed the movement of her hand. Do you have something? He asked. Lionel Graves gave a small breath through his nose. Dante, this has gone far enough. Personal objects from an employee's child will not clarify anything. Dante did not look at him. Then they should not frighten you. Maya slowly reached into her coat pocket. First came a folded school paper, then a yellow hair tie, then a peppermint wrapped in twisted plastic. Finally, she took out a hospital bracelet so worn it seemed almost too fragile for the room. The plastic was cracked near one edge and repaired with clear tape that had turned cloudy at the corners. The letters were faded, but under the crystal lamp they were still there. Noah B. St. Gabriel, 2:14 in the morning. A record number ran beneath it, though the last 2 digits had been rubbed pale by years of small fingers touching the same place. Maya held it with both hands. It is not trash, she said before anyone could call it that. Celeste's smile came back carefully. No one said it was trash, sweetheart. Maya looked at the bracelet instead of at her. People say old things are trash when they do not know why somebody kept them. Grace closed her eyes for half a second. The words were too honest, too childlike, and too close to the truth. Dante extended his hand, then stopped when Maya's fingers tightened around the plastic. He saw the fear. Not fear of him exactly. Fear that the one thing Noah had from the night he was born might be taken by another adult and never returned. Dante slid a small porcelain saucer from the tea service toward the edge of the table. Put it there, he said. It stays where everyone can see it. Maya placed the bracelet on the saucer. The sound it made was tiny, but everyone heard it. It looked poor in the middle of the Moretti table, poorer than the silver pen, poorer than the gold-edged foundation papers, poorer than Celeste's pearl bracelet resting near her glass. Yet no one looked away from it. Dante leaned closer, reading the hospital name. St. Gabriel. The name changed the weight of the room. St. Gabriel was not just a hospital. It was on the foundation letterhead in front of him. It was on Celeste's charity posters. It was on the donor wall where Valentina smiled for photographs every spring. Lionel reached toward the saucer with a calm hand. I should review that before any assumptions are made. Dante's palm came down flat on the table between Lionel's fingers and the bracelet. Not hard. Not loud. Final. Lionel stopped. You said this belongs to Noah, Dante said to Maya. She nodded. Yes, sir. Mama thought she lost it once, and she cried in the kitchen. So I fixed it with tape. Grace turned her face away, but not fast enough to hide the hurt. Why keep it? Dante asked. Maya touched the rim of the saucer with one finger. Because Noah asks if anybody was waiting when he was born. Mama gets sad when he asks. So I show him this and say it waited for him. For the first time, Dante looked at Grace not as an employee standing too close to family business, but as a mother who had been forced to save proof in a child's pocket. Celeste spoke then, sharper than she meant to. How does she still have that? The question slipped out clean and cold. Lionel's eyes cut toward her. Valentina's teacup paused halfway to her lips. Maya did not understand why the room changed again, only that it did. Dante lifted his eyes from the saucer to Celeste. Still? He asked. Celeste smoothed her expression immediately. I only mean most families throw those things away. Maya shook her head. Families do not throw away the only thing that says a baby was here. The fire cracked softly behind the brass screen. Dante moved the saucer closer to the center of the table and looked at the people around him, the ones who suddenly feared a cracked strip of plastic more than his silence. Then let us find out why someone expected this one to disappear. Dante did not move the hospital bracelet again. He left it on the porcelain saucer in the center of the Moretti table, where every adult had to look at it if they wanted to look at anything else. The unsigned foundation papers sat to one side now, their gold-edged pages suddenly less important than a cracked strip of plastic repaired by an 8-year-old girl with cloudy tape. Maya stood beside Grace with her hands folded tight in front of her coat, feeling the room turn around the bracelet the way water turns around a stone. Celeste had gone quiet after saying too much, but her silence did not feel calm. Felt polished. Lionel Graves adjusted his glasses and kept one palm over his folder. Valentina Moretti watched Dante instead of the bracelet, and that made Maya more nervous than if she had stared directly at her. Dante finally pulled his left sleeve down until the mark on his wrist was hidden completely. Then he took a clean white napkin from beside the tea service and laid it flat on the table. The cloth was so bright under the crystal lamp that the room seemed to hold its breath around it. He placed a black fountain pen across the napkin and slid both toward Maya. "Draw Noah's mark," he said. Grace stiffened. "Mr. Moretti, please. She is a child." Dante looked at Grace, and for the first time there was something careful in his voice. "That is why I am asking for a child's answer, not a lawyer's answer." Maya stared at the pen. It looked heavy, too expensive for her fingers, the kind of thing grown men used to sign names that could change other people's lives. "I am not good at drawing," she whispered. "I am not asking for pretty," Dante said. "I am asking for true." Celeste tilted her head, her voice soft enough for the room to call it kindness. "Dante, this is becoming uncomfortable. A frightened little girl should not be tested like a witness." Dante turned toward her. "Then stop acting as if you already know what she will draw." The words settled coldly. Maya reached for the pen with both hands. She did not look at Dante's covered wrist. She closed her eyes instead and pictured Noah asleep downstairs, his left hand curled near his cheek, the little moon bending when his fingers opened around her thumb. She remembered the dot because Noah once thought it was a crumb and tried to rub it off. She remembered laughing, then covering his wrist when Grace came into the room looking scared for a reason Maya had never understood. Maya opened her eyes and drew a small crooked crescent. She stopped, shook her head, and made one side a little deeper. Then she lifted the pen, hesitated, and placed a tiny, below the lower end. She frowned, touched the first dot with her fingertip, and marked another one slightly lower. "There," she said. "It goes down when his hand bends." No one spoke. Dante slowly uncovered his wrist and placed it beside the napkin without touching it. The crescent on his skin leaned the same way. The dark dot sat in the same place Maya had corrected. Grace put one hand over her mouth. Lionel looked away too fast. Valentina did not move, but the pulse at her throat gave one small jump. Celeste let out a breath that tried to become a laugh and failed halfway. Dante studied the napkin, then the wrist, then the child who had drawn what she had no reason to know. "A shape can be copied," he said. "A hidden dot remembered by a child is harder to explain." Lionel recovered first. "This is still not evidence. It is only memory." Dante nodded once. "Correct." He took his phone from his jacket and placed it face down beside the silver pen. "So we stop with memory. Everyone put your phones down." Celeste blinked. "Why?" "Because the next person who needs to send a message can say it out loud." One by one, the phones came down. Celeste's slim gold phone, Valentina's black one, Grace's cracked old phone, and Lionel's. Lionel was last. He held the device half a second too long. As he lowered it, the screen flashed, and the polished butter knife beside his plate caught the reflection backward. Dante's eyes moved to the knife before the message disappeared. The letters were reversed, but clear enough. "Find heart before he does." Dante did not reach for the phone. He did not raise his voice. He turned the butter knife slightly with one finger, then looked at Lionel. "I have not asked who heart is," he said. "So why are you already afraid I will find her?" Maya looked at the white napkin, the little black moon, and Noah's hospital bracelet waiting on the saucer. She did not know who Heart was. She only knew that, for the first time, the adults had stopped calling her confused. The name Heart stayed in the room after Dante said it, not like a person yet, but like a locked drawer someone had just pointed to. Lionel Graves did not answer. He only straightened the folder in front of him, lining its corners with the edge of the table as if neat paper could put the evening back in order. Celeste lowered her eyes to her phone, face down beside her glass, and for the first time her perfect charity smile had nowhere to go. Valentina remained still in her chair, one hand resting near the teacup, her pearls catching the firelight while her eyes measured Dante's silence. Maya looked from one adult to another and held her breath. She did not know why the name Hart mattered, but she knew it had made Lionel look at the door. Dante folded the napkin carefully so the ink would not smear, then placed it beside the hospital bracelet on the saucer. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, "bring Noah upstairs." Grace's face changed. "Mr. Moretti, he is sleeping. Then wake him gently." Dante's eyes moved once toward Lionel, then back to Grace. "No one else touches him. You bring him." Grace stood frozen for 1 second longer, caught between fear of refusing Dante and fear of bringing her sick child into a room full of people who had already tried to erase his name. Maya reached for her mother's hand. "Mama," she whispered, "I can help." Grace looked at her daughter, then at the bracelet on the saucer, and something in her tired face accepted that the truth had already climbed the stairs before Noah did. She left the sitting room with quick, quiet steps. Maya remained near the table because Dante had told her to stay visible, but every part of her wanted to run after her brother. The room waited. Rain pressed against the windows. The fire shifted behind the brass screen. Lionel cleared his throat. "Dante, I must advise you that exposing a toddler to this kind of emotional disturbance is unnecessary." Dante looked at him. "Then you should have answered the question about Hart." Lionel closed his mouth. A minute later, Grace returned carrying Noah against her shoulder. He was small in faded blue pajamas, his cheek warm and flushed from sleep, one hand gripping a wooden car with a missing wheel. His curls were damp at the edges, and when the light touched his face, Maya saw how tired he looked. "Maya," he murmured. Maya stepped forward, her voice soft. "I am right here, Noah. Just a little minute." Grace stopped at the edge of the carpet, the old invisible line where staff waited to be told if they could come closer. Dante saw the distance and said, "Bring him into the light, Mrs. Brooks." Grace walked forward slowly. Celeste tilted her head with arranged concern. "He looks feverish. This is not fair to him." Grace answered before fear could stop her. "What was not fair was St. Gabriel telling me his file could not be opened while he was burning up in my arms." Dante's gaze sharpened. "St. Gabriel refused him?" Grace shifted Noah higher and pulled a folded appointment card from her apron pocket. She placed it beside the bracelet and napkin. The card was bent at the corners, opened and closed too many times, with a red stamp across the bottom. Administrative hold. Lionel spoke quickly but carefully. "Hospital administration is complicated. A hold can mean many things." Dante picked up the card without taking his eyes off Lionel. "For a 2-year-old with a fever?" Lionel did not answer. Maya gently touched Noah's sleeve and looked at Grace first. Grace nodded once. Barely. Maya pushed the pajama cuff up just enough to show his left wrist, then held the fabric so the cold air would not stay on his skin. Under the crystal lamp, the little crescent appeared. Same curve. Same dark dot. Same place near the thumb. Dante's face went pale, but he did not step toward Noah too quickly. He uncovered his own wrist and placed it near the child's, leaving several inches between them. The 2 marks rested in the same pool of yellow light, one on the hand of a man feared in rooms all over the city, one on the hand of a sleepy little boy who only wanted his sister. Noah blinked at Dante's wrist and whispered, "Moon." Maya swallowed hard. "Yes," she said. "Your moon." Lionel found his voice first. "This still does not establish legal paternity, inheritance, or formal obligation." Dante turned the appointment card so the red stamp faced him. "A birthmark can be coincidence," he said. "A locked hospital file is a decision." Grace lowered her eyes. "They said if I kept asking, security would walk us out. They told me the system could not find him the right way." Dante looked at Noah, then at the hospital bracelet, then at the card stamped administrative hold. The secret was no longer only on skin. It had entered a hospital file, a denied appointment, and a child's fever. Who locked his file? Dante asked quietly. No one answered, and the silence made the red stamp look louder than any confession. The silence after Dante's question did not feel empty. It felt crowded, as if every answer the adults refused to give had stepped into the room and taken a seat. Grace held Noah close, his warm cheek pressed against her collar, while Maya kept her fingers around the edge of his pajama sleeve, so the little moon on his wrist would not stay uncovered in the cold air. Dante set the appointment card beside the hospital bracelet and the folded napkin. A child's keepsake, a child's drawing, a hospital stamp. None of them looked powerful, but together they had made 3 powerful adults forget how to speak. Lionel Graves finally adjusted his tie. Administrative holds are rarely personal, he said. They can be triggered by billing questions, guardianship confusion, privacy flags, system errors. Dante looked at him. You listed every harmless reason. Before I asked for one. Lionel's mouth closed. Grace looked down at Noah, then at the table. Her face carried the tired look of a woman who had been told too many times that asking for proof was the same as causing trouble. There is something else, she said. Lionel turned toward her too quickly. Mrs. Brooks, I would caution you against misrepresenting private documents. Grace's eyes lifted, and for the first time that night, fear did not make her smaller. It made her still. You left them for me, she said. Maya looked at her mother. She knew what Grace meant before the adults did. The envelope from the flour tin. The one wrapped in a grocery bag. The one Grace touched only on nights when Noah coughed too long or rent sat unpaid on the kitchen counter. Grace shifted Noah to one arm and reached into the deep pocket of her apron. She took out a white envelope softened by years of being hidden. Its edges were bent, and one corner had a faint dusting of flour still trapped in the crease. She placed it on the table, not beside Dante, not beside Lionel, but beside Noah's bracelet. Dante did not open it right away. He let everyone see the business card tucked into the flap. Lionel Graves, Moretti family attorney. Under it was a taxi receipt to St. Gabriel Private Wing, dated 2 days after Noah's birth, and a folded form titled Family Privacy Acknowledgement. Lionel's voice became careful. That is a standard confidentiality document used to protect families with public profiles. Grace looked at the paper as if it were a locked door she had been forced to carry. I never signed it. Lionel slid the form out and turned it toward Dante. Your signature appears at the bottom. Maya leaned forward. At the bottom of the page, in dark blue ink, were the words Grace Brooks. For 1 second, Grace seemed to shrink beneath her own name. Not because she had written it, but because someone had used it against her. Maya stared at the first letter. She had seen her mother's name on lunch bags, school forms, medicine labels, rent receipts, and notes stuck to the refrigerator when Grace left before sunrise. That is not Mama's G, Maya whispered.
Lionel Siged.
This is not a handwriting lesson. Dante turned to Maya. Explain. Maya pointed, careful not to touch the paper. Mama makes her G like an open circle. It almost closes, but it does not. That one looks like a hook. Grace's eyes filled, but her voice stayed steady. I can write it. Dante pushed the silver pen toward her. Only if you want to. Grace wrote her name on the blank edge of the envelope. Grace Brooks. The G opened softly, round and unfinished, exactly as Maya had said. Dante placed both signatures side by side. The difference was small enough for a busy office to ignore and clear enough for a daughter to recognize. Celeste stepped forward. Even if there is a question about one signature, that does not make a conspiracy. Dante picked up the taxi receipt. No, he said. This connects my family attorney to St. Gabriel Private Wing 2 days after Noah was born. He lifted the administrative hold card. This shows the same child was later blocked from care. He touched the bracelet without moving it. And this proves his record existed before someone tried to make it hard to find. Grace looked at the objects under the lamp. They did not have to make Noah disappear from the world, she said quietly. They only had to make him disappear from the paperwork. Maya looked at the table and understood something children should never have to learn. Paper could remember a person, but paper could also be taught to forget. Dante turned to Lionel. Who placed the hold? Lionel answered too fast. It was not Celeste. The room froze again. Dante lowered the card slowly. I did not say her name. Dante did not let Lionel's mistake become the loudest thing in the room. He let it sit there, cold and exposed, while every adult understood exactly what had happened. Celeste's name had been protected before it had been accused. Valentina lifted her chin as if dignity could cover a broken wall. Lionel stared at the administrative hold card, and for the first time that evening, his calm looked like a suit that no longer fit. Dante gathered the hospital bracelet, the napkin drawing, the appointment card, the forged signature, Grace's real signature, the taxi receipt, and the old envelope. He did not hand any of it to Lionel. He placed everything carefully inside his jacket pocket, beside the silver watch that had belonged to his father. This evening is over, he said. Celeste stepped forward. Dante, think about what this will do to the foundation. He looked at her, and his voice stayed quiet. I am thinking about the child your foundation turned away. Grace held Noah tighter. Maya stood close to her mother's side, one hand on Noah's wooden car, watching Dante the way children watch a storm through a window, not knowing whether it will pass or break something. Dante turned to Grace. You and your children are not returning to the staff wing tonight. Grace went still. Mr. Moretti, I do not have anywhere else to take them.
Ido. Lionel straightened.
Moving potential witnesses creates problems. Dante looked at him. Leaving them inside a house where everyone knows what they said creates bigger ones. No one argued after that. Within 20 minutes, Grace, Maya, and Noah left through the front hall, not the service corridor. Maya noticed because her shoes touched the main runner carpet, the red one she had only cleaned around before. Dante opened the front door himself. Outside, the rain had thinned to mist, and the black car waiting by the steps was not driven by any man Grace recognized from the mansion. Dante gave the address to the driver himself and made 3 calls from a phone Lionel had never managed. The first was to Dr. Samuel Reed, a pediatric specialist outside St. Gabriel. The second was to Judge Helen Merrow, a retired judge who agreed to serve as an independent legal witness. The third was to a private lab willing to perform expedited testing under supervised chain of custody. At the apartment 8 blocks away, the lights were warm, the couch was plain, and the kitchen clock ticked like a normal house instead of a mansion counting secrets. Dr. Reed arrived with a medical bag and spoke to Noah gently before examining him. Maya sat on the floor, rolling the broken wooden car back and forth in a crooked line because one missing wheel made it curve toward her every time. Noah watched the car and smiled. Sleepily. Dr. Reed told Grace that Noah needed cardiac follow-up soon, not panic, not guessing, but real follow-up, and that no unexplained administrative hold should have delayed a child with fever and symptoms. Grace pressed one hand to her mouth, not because the words surprised her, but because someone finally said them without blaming her. Judge Merrow logged every item on the kitchen table. Bracelet, napkin, appointment card, envelope, taxi receipt, signature samples. Then Dante and Noah gave cheek swabs, each sealed in a paper sleeve and signed across the flap. Maya watched carefully. It does not hurt, she whispered to Noah. He blinked and held out the wooden car as if bravery needed to be shared. Near 2 in the morning, Dante found Nurse Evelyn Hart in a closed diner off the West Side Highway, where the neon sign buzzed above empty booths and old coffee sat untouched in glass pots. Evelyn was older than Maya expected, with gray hair pinned back and a purse held in both hands. When Grace placed Noah's bracelet on the table, Evelyn's eyes filled. They told me that was destroyed, she said. Dante did not interrupt. Evelyn opened her purse and removed a birth log, a nursery intake sheet, a copied note from the Moretti Pediatric Fund, and a small recorder with tape around the battery cover. The fund note showed Noah's record number once linked to Moretti Assistance, then crossed out with the words status removed. I kept copies because a baby should not vanish because adults are afraid of a name, Evelyn said. Dante's thumb paused over the recorder. For 1 second, Maya saw something cross his face that did not look like power. It looked like a man about to hear his family become strangers. Then he pressed play. Valentina's voice filled the diner, clear and cold. That child cannot appear before the wedding. Not on paper. Not in blood. Not in this house. Lionel's voice followed. The hold will keep the file quiet. Then Celeste, softer but unmistakable, asked, "And Grace?" Valentina answered, "Grace is staff. Staff learn where doors are." Grace did not cry. She only pulled Noah closer, as if the recording had made the room colder. Dante stopped the recorder and looked at the evidence spread across the table. "I have used fear enough in my life," he said. "This time, every signature stands under light." Then he looked toward the dark hospital towers beyond the diner window and made his decision. The truth would not die in another private room. It would stand at St. Gabriel, in the glass atrium where Celeste would soon raise money in the name of children like the one she helped shut out. For nights later, St. Gabriel did not look like the place that had turned a feverish 2-year-old away. It looked clean enough to forgive itself. The glass atrium rose 3 stories above white orchids, gold donor plaques, and photographs of smiling children printed larger than life. Soft piano music moved between round tables covered in white linen. Men in dark suits and women in polished dresses lifted glasses beneath a banner that read, "Every child deserves care." Near the stage, Celeste Vane stood beneath the foundation seal, perfect in cream silk, speaking into a microphone with the same gentle voice she had used to make Maya sound confused. "Tonight," Celeste said, "we honor every mother who walks through our doors asking for help." Grace Brooks stood near the last row with one hand on Noah's stroller and the other wrapped around Maya's fingers. Noah slept under a blue blanket, his wooden car tucked near his side. Maya wore her old blue coat because it still had the pocket where the hospital bracelet had lived, though tonight the bracelet was not in her pocket. It rested inside Judge Helen Merrow's sealed folder, logged, photographed, and protected. Maya looked across the atrium and saw the side hallway where Grace had once waited with Noah burning against her shoulder, while a clerk said his file could not be opened. Tonight, velvet ropes blocked that same hallway for donors. Maya squeezed Grace's hand. Grace did not look away this time. Celeste smiled wider. "No child should be lost in paperwork," she said. The applause began, warm and easy. Then Dante Moretti stood up. He had been seated at the back, not at the family table, not beside Valentina, not beside Celeste. He walked toward the stage without hurry, dressed in black, his left wrist uncovered beneath the edge of his cuff. The applause thinned before it fully died. Celeste kept smiling, but her eyes hardened. "Dante," she said softly, away from the microphone. "Not here." Dante moved the microphone toward himself. Here is where the door was closed. The atrium went still. Behind him, the foundation logo faded from the large screen. A redacted hospital record appeared with private information covered, but the name Noah B., the time 2:14 in the morning, and the St. Gabriel record number visible. Dante did not raise his voice. "This is not rumor," he said. "This is a record." Judge Merrow stepped beside the stage with Grace's written consent and the evidence log. One by one, the screen showed the cracked hospital bracelet, Maya's napkin drawing, the appointment card stamped administrative hold, the forged signature beside Grace's real one, the taxi receipt to St. Gabriel Private Wing, Nurse Evelyn Hart's birth log, the Moretti Pediatric Fund note marked status removed, Dr. Reed's independent medical summary, and the supervised paternity report. Lionel Graves rose from his chair. "These materials are being presented without proper context." Judge Merrow looked at him over her glasses. "They are being presented with consent, redaction, chain of custody, and independent review." The room shifted. Valentina did not stand, but her pearls moved once at her throat. Celeste stepped forward, wounded softness returning to her face. "This woman has been in your house for years, Dante. She knows how to make a story sound painful." Grace's fingers tightened around the stroller handle, but she did not lower her head. Dante turned to the technician. The screen changed again. Archived hallway footage from St. Gabriel appeared, dated 2 days after Noah's birth. Lionel stood outside the records office. Valentina appeared beside him. Then Celeste entered the frame, not passing by, not attending a charity meeting, but waiting as a records clerk handed Lionel a folder. The silence became heavy enough for Maya to hear Noah breathing in the stroller. Dante faced Celeste. "You raised money for children with one hand," he said, "and used the other to close a hospital door on my son." Then the recorder played. Valentina's voice filled the glass atrium. "That child cannot appear before the wedding. Not on paper. Not in blood. Not in this house." Lionel's voice followed. "The hold will keep the file quiet." Celeste's voice came next. "And Grace." Valentina answered. "Grace is staff. Staff learn where doors are." No one applauded now. No one moved toward the exits. The donors who had praised compassion sat under the gold letters and looked at the woman they had never been asked to see. Grace stood beside Maya and Noah, not as a maid in the back of a rich room, but as the mother whose child had been hidden inside a system built to look kind. Dante stepped away from the microphone and looked directly at her. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, his voice carrying through the atrium, "how do you want the record to say what happened to your son?" Grace Brooks had spent years stepping aside before anyone had to ask. So when every face in the St. Gabriel atrium turned toward her, her body almost obeyed the old rule. Her hand tightened on Noah's stroller, and for 1 second Maya felt her mother begin to move backward, away from the light, away from the microphone, away from the gold letters that had always belonged to other people. Then Noah shifted under his blue blanket and his small left wrist slipped out beside the wooden car, the little crescent mark showing beneath the hospital lights. Grace stopped. She looked at her son, then at Maya, then at the side hallway where she had once been told the file could not open and security could be called if she kept asking. This time, no one was calling security. This time, the room was waiting for her answer. Grace walked forward slowly. Maya walked beside her, not pulling, not speaking for her, only holding her hand the way she had held Noah's sleeve in the mansion. Dante stepped back from the microphone when Grace reached the stage. He did not stand in front of her. Judge Marrow opened the evidence folder beside them. Dr. Reed stood near Noah's stroller with a calm face and a written follow-up plan in his hand. Evelyn Hart sat in the front row, crying quietly without covering her face. Grace looked at the hospital board, not at Celeste, not at Lionel, not at Valentina. "I want the record to say my son was born here," she said. Her voice shook, but it did not break. "I want the record to say his file was locked, not lost. I want the record to say I asked for help, and I was treated like asking made me dangerous. I want it to say I did not lie." The atrium stayed silent. Not embarrassed silence. Listening silence. Grace took one breath and continued. "I am not asking for charity. I am asking for his name to be put back where it belongs." Dante lowered his eyes for a moment, because the shame in that sentence was not Grace's. It belonged to the people who had made a mother prove that her child existed. Judge Marrow placed Grace's statement into the official evidence packet and announced that the independent paternity report, collected under supervised chain of custody, confirmed Dante Moretti as Noah's biological father. Dante signed the first legal acknowledgement filing under court supervision with the plain black pen Judge Marrow provided. It did not look like a movie miracle. It looked like paperwork, careful and witnessed, which made it stronger. Lionel tried to speak about procedure, but Judge Marrow looked at him over her glasses and said, "Procedure is exactly what we are restoring." Before the gala ended, Lionel's access to Moretti files was suspended, and the evidence involving the forged signature was prepared for review by the State Bar. Celeste was removed from active foundation authority pending an independent audit, her donor smile gone beneath the same banner she had used for praise. Valentina was stripped of control over trusts connected to children, medical care, and heirs. Dante did not raise his voice at any of them. He did something colder. He took away the systems they had used to make silence look respectable. Then he turned to the St. Gabriel board and required an independent review of the pediatric wing, a patient advocate office for families without private insurance, and a written policy that no child needing medical evaluation could be blocked by an unexplained administrative hold. Dr. Reed handed Grace Noah's appointment for the next morning and a direct number answered by a real person. That was when Grace cried. Not when Celeste accused her. Not when the recorder played. Only when care arrived without suspicion attached to it. Maya reached into the pocket of her blue coat and touched the place where the hospital bracelet used to live. Judge Marrow placed the cracked bracelet on the table beside Dante's old silver watch, the one from his father. One object had carried a powerful family name for decades. The other had carried a little boy's existence when no one else would. Dante knelt to Maya's height, careful and slow. "You do not have to keep proof in your pocket anymore, Maya," he said. "From now on, the records will carry his name." Maya looked toward the side hallway, then back at him. "So Noah does not have to use the back door anymore?" Dante looked at Grace before answering, because this promise belonged to her first. "No," he said, "and neither does your mother." The next morning, the photograph people remembered was not Celeste under the gold banner or donors holding glasses beneath the glass roof. It was Grace Brooks carrying Noah through the front doors of St. Gabriel, Maya walking beside them in the old blue coat, and Dante Moretti a few steps behind, holding the door open without asking anyone to call him kind. The smallest person in the room had not understood inheritance law, hospital boards, or family power. She had only remembered the little moon on her brother's wrist. And because Maya Brooks did not forget, a child erased on paper was finally seen in the light.